Hi, everyone. I'm Jono. I'm from Shenkar in Israel, from the master's program there in game design. We love cooperative games, don't we? And games are great. Games help individuals socialize and form groups, playing together in a group, in cooperation, engagement, and social activities outside of the games even. Now, one key element to cooperation is cohesiveness. This is the strength of the social bonds within the group. Cohesiveness, it's a sort of social glue or a sense of togetherness. And while there are many papers discussing how to measure it, the central idea is that it captures this alignment around values and goals. So what we set out to do is test these concepts and examine how the short-term cohesion of a group, right? How the process of aligning on these values that I mentioned relates to actual cooperation within the game. So we wanted to design an experience that puts players into situations that would encourage cooperation. There's several sources of inspiration. We were looking at Fortnite and Overcooked. If you know those games, those are things that came to mind. We looked at them as examples, but ultimately we decided to create our own experience, something that we could better control and that required participants to engage in randomly generated tasks, which contributed to the total score. So let's talk a little bit about the game because it's on there. So our game is called Tripping Troll Trucker Tales. The players take on the roles of trolls who've taken over a dwarven mining vehicle. So they don't know how it works. They don't know exactly what they have to do. So they have to communicate and they have to operate these workstations that look kind of strange and stop hazards and see how far they can go with the vehicle while also keeping an eye on the fuel and making sure that they're constantly keeping the vehicle going. So participants organized their own groups. We had a total of something like 25 teams. And then so we had people play the game and then fill out questionnaires. So the questionnaires came before and after. These are the double car and DAR questionnaires that measure a set of metrics relating to cohesiveness. And they filled this out as individuals. So we had responses from each team member in each team. And then we collected the gameplay data itself. So the challenge here is around quantifying what cooperation is in our game and what performance is. We needed these metrics because we wanted to test those against the cohesiveness itself. So one of the key metric we have is player contribution. Basically, the game is pretty simple. So what we can look at is the share of total actions performed in the game by each player. So what did we see? We looked at what everybody does. We looked at whether players were sticking to one station in particular for the entire session, and that also came through. Going by intuition, what we expected was to see that player cooperation, that means a fair distribution of labor within the game, would correlate to a sense of cohesiveness and to their overall success. And obviously, because I said that's what we're expecting, you know where I'm going with this. We actually saw the opposite. So what we found were a few interesting things. Players were definitely finding themselves in specific roles. We found that players were kind of sticking to the same thing, and everyone playing tended to pick one station and stick with it for the entire game. But the other thing we found, and that's what that chart shows there, is that as one player took over more of the work, the sense of cohesiveness for the group went up. In other words, if one player was carrying the team, then the overall sense that we got from the team, from the questionnaires, their sense of communication and goals was stronger, which was actually quite surprising. And actually in some cases, we actually saw that their cohesiveness improved from before and after, especially when one player was doing most of the work. So what can we take away from this? Well, first of all, obviously there's a gameplay question, right? We built in these metrics into the game so that we could measure how players were contributing and how much work each one was doing. And we can learn from this in terms of our game design and diversifying the roles and allowing more players to contribute. The other question is, right, the real life implications of what we're seeing here, that obviously it merits further study, and we want to dive deeper into that, is this assumption. We know that when we spend time with friends, that improves our bond. We often participate in things like team building exercises at work. And the question is whether these things actually have the impact we think that they do. So this is an opportunity for us to look further into that and seeing that, does the cooperation that we think we're seeing actually translate in the way we expect into stronger bonds? Thank you very much.